Welcome everyone to another YIVO Fellowship lecture. Our lecture today is sponsored by the Workman Circle, Dr. Emmanuel Pott, visiting professorship in Eastern European Jewish Studies. Our lecture today is the recipient of that fellowship. Her name is Dr. Monika Adamczyk-Garbowska, and she is a professor of comparative literature at Marie Curie Skłodowska University in Lublin. She's the author and editor of several books on Jewish topics in Polish and co-editor of Contemporary Jewish Writing in Poland, an anthology, Jewish Presence in Absence, The Aftermath of the Holocaust in Poland, 1944 to 2010, and Polin 28, Jewish Writing in Poland. She has translated more than 20 books from English and Yiddish into Polish. In 2004, she received the Jan Karski and Pola Narenska Award for her research on Yiddish literature and language, and in 2016, the Irena Sendlerova Memorial Award. As noted, she is the recipient of the 2025-2026 Workman Circle, Dr. Emmanuel Pott Visiting Professorship in Eastern European Jewish Studies at the YIVO Institute. Her lecture today is entitled From Lublin to New York and Back, Yankev Glatshteyn and His Peregrinations. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Monika Adamczyk-Garbowska.
Thank you very much, Eddie, for your introduction, and good afternoon or good evening to everybody who's joined this webinar, depending where you are in the US, Poland, or Israel. First of all, I would like to thank YIVO Institute for granting me the fellowship that enabled me to search through Yankev Glatstein's unique archive and get a much deeper insight into his life and work. I would also like to cordially thank Professor David Roskis and Shana Novik-Roskis for hosting me in their home during my stay in New York, which included access to the amazing library, which also helped me in my research. I know that some people who are watching this lecture or might watch it in the future know a lot about Glatstein, and some do not and only want to learn about him now. So I will try to attune my talk to both audiences, and apart from a discussion of new findings, I will give some condensed information about the writer. Almost 38 years ago, thanks to a grant from the American Council of Learned Societies, I also had a chance to conduct my first research at the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research in New York, still on the East 86th Street. I was working on a book on Isaac Bashevis Singer, and at one point I came across a short text entitled The Fame of Bashevis Singer in the Congress Biweekly of December 27, 1965, so long before Bashevis got the Nobel Prize, by someone named Jacob Glatstein. The name didn't mean anything to me at that time, and I was astonished by his shockingly harsh critique of the writer whom I greatly valued at that time. The mysterious author accused Singer of betraying the Jewish tradition and attuning his fiction to the unrefined taste of the non-Jewish audience. Soon I found out that Singer's adversary was an eminent Yiddish poet and critic, Yankev Glatshteyn, and what is more, he came from the city where I was born and lived. Glatstein was born in Lublin in 1896 and spent the first 18 years of his life there before leaving just before the outbreak of the First World War for New York, where he established together with other Yiddish poets an important movement called Inzikhism in Yiddish and Introspectivism in English. Gradually, he became one of the most important poets and critics in the field of Yiddish. In 1938, under the influence of political changes in Europe, he announced in his poem A Gute Nachtwelt, Good Night World, a return to the ghetto, but ghetto understood as a traditional Jewish community in a different sense than the word became known during the Holocaust. And later, he became one of the most important poets of the Shoah, commemorating the Jews of Lublin, among others. He died in New York in November 1971, leaving behind 12 collections of poems, 3 novels, and 8 volumes of essays. And yet I had never heard of him, to a large extent on account of the complicated political situation in communist Poland. I felt embarrassed that I was so ignorant, but unfortunately at that time almost no one in Lublin knew about Glatstein. As I later found out, there were some translation of his poems published in the 1960s and early 1970s in the Polish section of Folkstimme, the only Yiddish paper published in Poland at that time, and in an anthology of Jewish poetry that had to wait for its publication 15 years because of censorship. It was prepared in 1977 and published in 1983. Anyway, after returning to Lublin from New York, although most of my time was spent on researching and translating Bashevis Singer, I gradually tried to introduce Glatstein to the Lublin audience by translating his poems, but translating first his poems. But what attracted most of my attention are 2 travelogues that are the result of Glatstein's visit to Poland, and particularly to Lublin, in the summer of 1934. After 20 years' absence, he returned to the city of his birth to visit his dying mother. She died in Lublin on August the 2nd, 1934. The 2 books, Ven Yash's Geforn, When Yash Went Away, published in Yiddish in 1938, and Ven Yash's Gekumen, When Yash Arrived, published in Yiddish in 1940, were published in English in 1969 and 1962 respectively, and in 2010 in new and revised translations as the Glatstein Chronicles, edited and with an introduction by Ruth Weiss. In these books, the author combines his reminiscences and reflections from various times, but notably from the time of his journey and his early years in Lublin, juxtaposing them with his American experience. What increased my curiosity was the motto to his first travelogue, a fragment quoted in Polish from a poem by a well-known Polish poet Maria Konopnicka, and references to the eminent Polish novelist Stefan Żeromski in his second novel. I also enjoyed finding references to various places familiar to me and to people whom I knew from historical research of Jewish Lublin. When I started reading various critical pieces by foreign scholars, I realized that some of them look at these novels in a completely different way, more as a fantasy than a reportage. So one of my purposes became reconstructing the journey that Glatstein undertook in July 1934, 20 years after emigrating to New York, and generally trying to answer the question what place Lublin occupied in his oeuvre. He entitled his last collection of poems A Yid von Lublin, that is a Jew from Lublin. He wrote a moving elegy to Lublin entitled Lublin, mein heiliger Stadt, Lublin, my holy city, referred to Lublin and Majdanek in several poems, and wrote a few articles about pre-war Lublin and the unveiling of the monument to the victims of the Lublin ghetto in 1963. So it was obvious that Lublin was on his mind to some extent. But what intrigued me was if he had any contacts with people in Lublin and Poland in general, especially after the war. I somehow suspected that he didn't want to visit Poland after the war and to see the cities and towns without Jewish communities. This is what we know about Bashevis Singer. It is clear from various reports that he didn't want to listen to stories about destruction. For example, Jerzy Krzyżanowski, a Polish-American literary scholar, described a meeting with Bashevis in the early 1980s at a reception after a literary evening organized at a university in the United States. He asked Singer if he still remembered the Polish language, mentioned the magician of Lublin, and added that he was in the city during the war and witnessed the annihilation of the Jewish quarter. Singer gladly spoke to him in Polish. He even recited a fragment from a famous Polish romantic epic poem, Pan Tadeusz, but he interrupted him, waving his hand impatiently when he mentioned the destruction of the Jewish quarter. And he said, I quote, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to know. For me, Lublin, Poland, all this is still alive, as it was when I left. So I thought that this was similar with Glatstein. After all, to whom would he go? I was telling my American colleagues who were interested in Gladstein that they should come to Lublin, Kazimierz, and now Enczów to fully comprehend and enjoy the two autobiographical novels. Indirectly, I was referring to Goethe's famous dictum, wer den Dichter will verstehen, muss in Dichters Lande gehen. Who wishes to understand the poet must go to the poet's land. Actually, I had a chance to take some of my friends there. But on the other hand, I knew that Lublin and vicinity was not the only land important for Gladstein. After all, he spent 57 years of his life in New York. So if I want to learn more about him, I must go to his other land. That's why this fellowship in New York was so important for me. What I found in the archives greatly surpassed my expectations, but haven't got enough time to address all my findings. Besides, it would be boring for most of the audience. So during this talk, I will mention only some that I consider particularly illuminating, and I will also show some pictures after this introduction. I can just add that the archive at YIVO consists of almost 400 files in 21 large boxes, and in some files one can find dozens of letters and newspaper clippings, so it's an extremely rich archive, extremely rich collection. One of the most important findings was Glatstein's correspondence with Yiddish writers residing in Poland after the war, including Jeszajahu Spiegel, Lili Berger, or David Swart, and most notably his letters from spring 1964 to Bernard Mark, the director of the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw at that time, and to Herr Smoller, the editor of Volksstimme. He informed them that he would be spending the summer in Europe and would like to happen to Poland, literally drop in to Poland in August, and ask if they thought it would make sense to pay a visit then, because he was not sure if Haveirim Schreibers, that is his fellow writers, would be in Warsaw at that time, or perhaps they will be if Dacze, that is on vacation. He added that he wanted to visit Warsaw, Krakow, Lodz, Lower Silesia, and mine, Lublin. It is quite meaningful and touching that on various occasions, when he mentions the city, he writes mine, Lublin, my Lublin. Smoller answered him that in August, most people Gladstein would like to meet would probably be away, and suggested September for a visit. This correspondence is very cordial. Herr Smoller and Bernard Mark, too, offered to arrange Gladstein's visit in the best possible way, but Gladstein responded that he already had some other plans for September, and perhaps he could come in November. I don't know what happened later. Anyway, the visit didn't take place. Bernard Mark died not long after, in 1966, so this could have also affected Gladstein's plans. But in February 1967, he received an invitation from Herr Smoller to the 25th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising that was going to take place in April 1968. He enthusiastically accepted the invitation, expressing his joy at the possibility of meeting fellow writers and participating in such an important commemoration event. One can guess that he didn't come because not long after, the so-called anti-Zionist and in fact anti-Semitic campaign started in Poland. Soon later, Herz Smolar left Poland, and so did some other writers with whom Glatstein corresponded, for example, David Swart or Lili Berger. In his letter from spring 1964, he doesn't mention that the time of his prospective visit would be exactly 30 years after his memorable visit in 1934, but I think this is hardly a coincidence that the idea of visiting Poland occurred to him at that particular time. We know that back in the 1930s, he planned to write a third Yash novel describing his return from Europe to the United States, but he never did. He only published a short fragment, probably because the outbreak of the Second World War largely changed his perspective. Would he write a new travelogue in the 1960s if he came? And if not a novel, perhaps some poems and opinion pieces? There are also some amusing findings in this correspondence. For example, in a letter of January 4, 1967, Glatstein informs Herz Smolar that there is a Jewish man in Lublin who keeps writing to him and inviting him to Lublin because he considers Glatstein his uncle. The man even offers to take him to Nałęczów to relax and cure his nerves. "For was ihm fällt ein, als ich hab Nerven, weiß ich nicht," comments Glatstein. I don't know why it occurs to him that I have nerves. So Glatstein was well known for his sense of humor and irony. On the other hand, in other letters, one can see his serious involvement and concern about Jewish Lublin. In the late 1950s, he tried to intervene, writing to some influential people in Poland, including Bernard Mark, when he got information from various sources about the neglect of the Jewish cemetery in Lublin. During my research, I thought sometimes that perhaps I exaggerate with my attempts to connect Glatstein with Lublin. After all, he spent most of his life in New York and became a very important figure in Jewish life there, as well as in other countries with large Jewish communities. For example, he traveled a lot to South America. He undoubtedly was recognized as an important New York Jewish intellectual, but one doesn't exclude the other. Most people, and especially artists, keep in themselves various identities. But because of my doubts, I was very happy to read Nachman Blumenthal's text published after Glatstein's death entitled Yankev Glatshteyn der Lubliner, that is Yankev Glatstein the Lublin Jew. I didn't come across this text early, only now at Ivo. Blumenthal was not originally from Lublin, but in the interwar period, after graduating from Warsaw University, he worked there as a high school teacher. After the war, he became the first director of the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw, and in 1950 he left for Israel. He contributed to the Lublin Isker book. He wrote an introduction to Rosa Fishman-Schneidman's book about pre-war Jewish Lublin and edited Bela Mandelsberg's Schildkreuz scholarly paper. Bela Mandelsberg was a historian who researched history of Jewish Lublin, and while editing this volume, Blumenthal corresponded with Glatstein because he knew that Glatstein had met Bela Mandelsberg during his visit to Lublin in Nałęczów in the summer of 1934. Considering these connections, I treat Blumenthal's opinion as very important. And that is what he says, I quote, "When Glatstein came to Israel and met with me in Jerusalem, his first questions were when I was in Lublin recently, how the city looked like without Jews, and so on and so on. The same happened at the end of 1967 when I met him in New York. Not only personally did he live in Lublin from far away, but Lublin was interwoven into his poetic oeuvre." Then, end of quote. Then Blumenthal mentions Ven Yash's geforn and Ven Yash's gekumen, and he says, I would like to quote it in Yiddish. Wenn Melayen die zwei Bücher gewidmet der Dosiker Reise, trefft ihr sich mit Lublin heimische Typen. Man kann viele erkennen, mit wem Ven Yash hat sich dort getroffen. Hagam Glatshteyn geht nicht an seine Namen. A Lubliner zet in de Bücher a Reportage von seiner Heimstadt. A Fremder bloß a künstlerische Beschreibung von Leben von den Juden in Polen der Zweiten Weltmilchome. And in English, when one reads the two books dedicated to the journey, one meets familiar figures from Lublin. One can even guess whom Yash had met there, although Glatshteyn doesn't give the names. A person from Lublin sees in these books a reportage from his or her city, a foreigner, a merely artistic description of life of Jews in Poland before the Second World War, end of quote. I was ecstatic to read these words of a historian whom I value so much, because this is exactly what I felt from the very beginning when I read the books, except that I would replace the word blois only or merely with while, because I read these books both as a reportage and an artistic depiction. One reading doesn't exclude the other, and this is the power of these books, that they can be read in different ways, and if possible, I think it's best to combine these two different perspectives. It is fascinating that when one immerses oneself deeper into various sources, one can find traces of inspirations not only in the presentation of familiar figures, like Blumenthal mentions, but some scenes that otherwise seem almost surrealist. Placing the novel in a historical and biographical context leads to a discovery of more links to certain motifs present in the books. For example, the final scene in Ven Yash's gekumen may seem fully imaginary. The narrator returns to the hotel after his day trip to Kuzmir, that is Kazimierz on the Vistula, and learns that Steinman, the man he met and who is the main character in this novel, is dying. Steinman was based on a real figure of a historian and writer, originally from Piotrków, Moshe Feinkind. This is one of the most striking scenes in the novel, because surrounded by his admirers, Steinman actually wants them to sing. I quote, "He wanted us to sing something, a Hasidic song, a cheerful song. I couldn't believe my ears. I leaned closer. He saw my surprise and repeated, a song, a cheerful one." End of quote. Glatstein met Moshe Feinkin in Nałęczów when the latter was still in a relatively good state of health, although he suffered from various illnesses. However, he died less than a year after the encounter in Nałęczów in June 1935. And in an obituary in Literarische Blätter, the main Yiddish literary periodical published in Warsaw before the Second World War, we read, I quote, "He wrote his last historical articles in bed, as the people close to him state, and he was cheerful before his death and kept on singing cheerful songs. He said that he wanted to part with the word via singing." End of quote. It's very probable that Glatstein was familiar with this obituary, as he certainly read Literarische Blätter, and it also inspired him to create the last scene. This particular example proves how things that seem surreal in fiction might actually have a solid base in reality. In his essays written after the war, Glatstein recalled, often with reverence and nostalgia, his city, fully aware of its destruction but proud of its grand history. Let me quote a fragment from his essay published in Togmorgen Journal on November 12, 1965, in which he commemorates Bella Mandelsberg and stresses the importance of her research in the context of the significance of Lublin as a Jewish center. Here I quote, "The great and warm-hearted Jewish city of Lublin has not received the thorough attention that such a city should have received from Jewish historians. One has to really look hard in order to find any in-depth, real, or authentic information about the Jews of Lublin who began settling in and around the city and then outside of it, despite various decrees and expulsions in the 14th century. Of course, there are many well-known important historical periods in the life and development of this colorful Jewish city, which was considered the third largest in the Kingdom of Poland. But as already mentioned, extended studies devoted to Lublin are almost non-existent. One has to plow through the general field of Jewish Polish history in order to gain a picture of the centuries of Jewish life in Lublin and understand the great enthusiasm with which they built their life there. Over time, Lublin reminded Jews of Babylonia, with its intense Jewish spiritual activity and palpable vivacity." End of quote. And Gladstein's elegy, Lublin, mein heiliger Stadt, Lublin, my holy city, is one of the most moving texts I know of, commemorating a place and a whole community destroyed in the Holocaust. After describing in detail the vibrant pre-war life, he concludes with the words, "Who will raise you up again and rebuild you, my holy city, now that you've been razed to your foundations and are one frightful gravestone? They are hammering shingles and laying roofs. They are repairing and tidying up the old disgusting world. But my holy city, the city of my word, will never be rebuilt." Actually, these words could be attributed to many other communities and the name Lublin replaced with the name of a different city or town. No wonder this elegy was published on various occasions, not only in reference to Lublin, and actually sometimes even Glatstein published it in on the occasion of the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. So after this long introduction, now I will show you some photographs that will maybe be connected with what I said. Just let me now just make sure that I can. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Yes, okay. So here on this first slide is this portrait of Yankev Glatshteyn, Jacob Glatstein, sometimes even his family name was spelled as Gladstone. It's probably most best known because it was reproduced in many Yiddish edition, English edition, and other edition. But let's go back to his photographs from the Lublin period. And here there is this beautiful photograph taken in Lublin, Yankev Glatshteyn as a high school student in 19, as a 15-year-old boy. And here, this picture, kind of romantic in the style, quite typical of that period. Gladstein and his two friends, and those of you who read Ven Yash's geforn might remember the scene when he writes about how he and his friends would uh, go along, go along Krakowskie Przedmieście, the main street in Lublin, discussing various modern novels. Here, there is this picture, one of my most important discoveries in EVO archives, Yankev Glatshteyn's parents, sister, and brothers. This is from what it says on in the back. This is a picture, a photograph that his parents, actually his father signed it, sent Glatstein in 1921 with greetings to our beloved son. And this is a wonderful thing because never before did I see his parents, and he devoted so many poems, especially poems to his father, to his mother, and to his family. So I assume this picture was taken in Lublin more or less at that time. Here, there is an kind of another interesting discovery, envelope from the letter sent to Glatstein by Shmuel Niger. Shmuel Niger was a very important Jewish writer and critic, and this letter was sent from Vilnius or Vilna to Lublin in December 1913. Here you can see that the address is in Russian. It says here, Kowu Glatshteinu, Novaya Płoszcz, numer 4. So a new Market Square number 4, or Nowy Plac Targowy in Polish number 4. So it's kind of important for two reasons. One thing is that we know where Gladstein lived at that particular time, because earlier he lived somewhere else. And also that at such an early age, he already had contacts with other writers and was trying to publish his juvenile work. Here, there are these beautiful covers from two English editions of these two travelogues, autobiographical novels, edited and with an introduction by Ruth Wise. This first edition is from 2010, the more recent edition from 2023 was published by the Yiddish Book Center, and one can see that these two covers complement each other, because on the first one, the focus is on the voyage by ship, and actually an important part of this novel is a description of his travel on a ship to Europe before he reaches Warsaw and then Lublin, while the other one focuses on the Lublin years. Here, this is a front page of Lubliner Tugbrat, a daily published in Lublin in the interwar period, and this is an issue from August the 3rd, 1934. Actually, in an earlier issue, there was a small announcement that a Yiddish writer, Yankev Glatshteyn, is coming to Lublin with a visit, and here the corner at the bottom, you see obituary, and I will show you a close-up of this obituary. This is the obituary of his mother, who died in Lublin after severe illness at the age of 70. And this is also a valuable piece of news, because we read here that the Levaya, the funeral procession, will start at Rynek 14. So this must have been the place where his parents lived at that time. This is actually the central square in the old town in Lublin, and it's signed by Man, Zin, Tochter, Eidem uneiniglich, that is husband, sons, daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren. And here's another discovery from Ivo. Yankev Glatshteyn with his with his brothers, and I suppose sister-in-law, not sister, but I'm not sure yet. But what's also interesting is that we know where the picture was taken, because there is a inscription at the bottom that it's in the Victoria Photo Studio, 43 Krakowskie Przedmieście. This is the main street in Lublin, and we know from historical research that there was such a well-known photo studio. And this is a picture from the same studio. Also on the stamp it says that this is Victoria. And what's interesting is that in a book edited by Ruth Whitman, who was a very good translator, she published a collection of translation of Glatstein's poems into English. This picture is included, and it says New York 1932. But here we rather know that this is Lublin 1934. Also, what's interesting is that only in these photographs from more or less this time, Glatstein, you can see Glatstein with a beard. On most other photos, he's clean shaven, and I'm not sure, but the reason might have been that observing Shiva, observing being in mourning, he didn't shave. And here a picture of sanatorium in Nałęczów, where Glatstein plays the action of his second novel, Ven Yash's Gekumen, although he never mentions the name. So this is a pre-war view, this is contemporary view. You can see that it's quite idyllic, so no wonder that this man from Lublin, who would write to Glatstein, wanted to help him cure his nerves. And actually there is this very, one of my favorite quotations from Ven Yash's gekumen, when Steinman says, if I were Rothschild, I would arrange for the entire Jewish people to spend a month or two in this atmosphere. This is just what our people needs to restore its shattered nerves. And it's quite interesting because the famous Polish writer from the positivist period, this is the second part of the 19th century, Bolesław Prus, who would often come to Nałęczów, and there is his statue in Nałęczów, his bench, where you can sit next to him and take a picture, expressed similar view. He said that people would be generally better if they had a chance to spend some time in that spa. And here's so this is not a discovery from Ivo, but an earlier discovery, but this is one of my favorite pictures taken in Nałęczów in 1934. And here you can see Glatstein to the right, Moshe Feinkind to the left. And if you read the book, you can see that the Steinman looks very much like Feinkind, and in the middle, the historian Bella Mandelsberg, and here standing, I think this is the wife of Mordechai Glatshteyn, called also Marcus. She perished during the Holocaust. And here another picture. This is the picture that I found in Iwo, Gladstein with his brothers in Nałęczów. You can see with this the stick that he has in his hand in the previous picture. And here a review by Josef Herrnhut. Josef Herrnhut was a writer, poet born in Lublin. And this is from another Lublin newspaper, Lubliner Stimme. This was a weekly, a Bundist, rather leftist weekly. And here Herrnhut announces Ven Yash is geforn. Here in the note at the end, he says that fragments of the novel will be published in later issues. Here there's this beautiful cover of the last collection of poems, Ait von Lublin. So obviously he's a poet in New York. He feels very comfortable in New York, but he stresses his roots in Lublin. And these are the illustrations from this edition. And here there is an illustration of Brama Grodzka, the gate leading from the old town in Lublin to the for the former Jewish quarter that was destroyed during the war. But what is also important is that nowadays in Brama Grodzka there is important educational center, Brama Grodzka Theater, and that cares a lot about commemorating Jews of Lublin, and actually they also contributed a lot to commemorating Glatshteyn. Here's a cover from the collection of poems that was published in Lublin by a cultural center in Lublin, not by Brama Grodzka, but a different center. And this is a collection of poems. I translated some of the poems. Most of them were translated by Bela Schwarzman-Czarnota, but there are also a pre-war translation. There are two translations by Deborah Fogel, important critic and poet who cooperated with Glatstein and other poets from the Inzikh circle. And in the three last pictures, I just wanted to show you, especially those people who haven't been to Lublin. This is a memorial stone commemorating Yankev Glatshteyn, where he supposedly was born. And this was placed there on the initiative of this Brama Grodzka Center. And the mural commemorating Jews of Lublin is based on Stefan Kiełchnya's photograph. The photographer who took pictures of almost all the houses in the Jewish quarter before the war. It's located next to the Vivo, not to sound like Ivo, Vivo shopping center. And the last picture, this is the part of this mural with a map of the Jewish quarter. And it includes my translation of Yankev Glatstein's poem, this elegy Lublin, my holy city, Lublin, mein heilige Stadt. So to conclude, Glatstein went from Lublin to New York and then from New York to Lublin, but he didn't return again after the war to the city of his birth, in spite of some attempts. However, he kept traveling between Lublin and New York in his poetry and prose, What one can do now is to bring him back to Lublin by acquainting contemporary audiences with his work. And that is what I am trying to do now. And I must say that thanks to the fellowship from Eva, I was able to find numerous missing links. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adamczyk-Gabrowska. Again, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the question and answer section of the Zoom. I'm so glad you had you were able to find a lot of material in the Evo archives. Obviously, that's one of the reasons the Evo exists, and I hope that it proves useful for your work. One of the very curious things is, as you noted, Yankev Glatshteyn comes to New York uh, in 1914, and I think 10 years later, he's in law school at New York University. And this is a person who makes a conscious decision to not engage with what could be a very successful career as a lawyer in New York. And instead, he returns to Yiddish as sort of the core item that inspires him, that makes him want to create art. And that in and of itself is interesting. But then you have this second level where Lublin becomes very important. And obviously you just showed how that happens. But his, this sort of constantly going back on his part, either to Yiddish, uh, to Lublin, to the sort of source of everything for him, it appears. I'm just wondering if you could comment on that. I also just want to add that it was very interesting that the differences you noted in the reaction to post-war Lublin between Bashevis Singer and Glatstein. Glatstein is very interested in what happened and how it appears, whereas Bashevis Singer, you know, doesn't want his imaginary Lublin destroyed. I just thought that was very, very good juxtaposition.
Yeah, as to Gladstein and his education in New York, he went to law school, but he didn't stay there long. I think it was his destiny in a sense to become a writer, and even in some of his poems devoted to his father. There is this beautiful poem in which he writes how his father introduced him to Yiddish literature and also foreign literature, and how the father is thinking that here a new Jewish writer is growing, and Lublin was not important for him at the beginning. I think this was the two factors, or at least two factors, this journey in 1934, because it wasn't wasn't coming as a kind of tourist or just to visit his family. It was a very dramatic return because he knew that his mother was mortally ill, and also the situation in Europe. Actually, when he describes his travel from through Europe to Lublin, they go through Germany, and he already notices the situation in Germany. And later he wrote this famous poem, A Gute Nachtwelt. So these factors, also while being in Poland, he saw the situation of the Jewish people in Lublin, in Poland. He talked to many people. So this was the time then he got really, it must have been very important for him if he decided to write these travelogues, because earlier he wrote mainly, well, he wrote short stories, he wrote poems, he wrote literary criticism. So this must have been very important. And of course, later, because of the Majdanek concentration and death camps, Lublin, in his imagination and memory, was connected with this terrible destruction. Also, we have to remember that Glatstein co-edited one of the first anthologies of literature on the Holocaust.
Right. Thank you. So we'll get to some of the questions in the Q&A section. If anyone has one, please post it. Matthew Johnson says, thanks you for a wonderful presentation, and asks if you could say more about the reception of the Yash novels in Lublin or in Poland more generally. You mentioned a couple of reviews of the novels in the Lublin press. He asks if they're interesting reviews, and also post-war correspondence with Yiddish writers or cultural figures like Bear Mark. Do you have a sense that these writers engaged with these novels?
Not really. For sure, Nachman Blumenthal did. I'm not sure if Bernard Mark or Herr Smoller read his novels. You know, the problem is that these novels were published, the first one in 1938, the other one in 1940. So they couldn't even reach most of the readers in Poland. The first one did to some extent, but it wasn't, widely distributed. It was published in New York. I can imagine that if the war didn't break out, there would have been a very kind of even a stormy reception, especially of the second novel, because there he presents in a satirical way a number of characters that can be easily identified, both in the Lublin part and the Kazimierz part. So as far as this Yiddish reception of the original, it was rather limited. Hernfeld, for example, writes that he writes the novel with the sentiment because there are all these references to Lublin. As far as the reception of the Polish translation, there is no Polish translation yet. I am now working on the Polish translations, and I want to publish them as richly annotated translation with references to these, especially to these historical context. So far, I translated only fragments from both books, and they were published in an anthology on Kuzmir, also in some periodicals, but the whole books weren't published, and they should be published in Polish. So I hope that there will be some interest in, because now, for example, in Lublin now, most people associate Lublin with Bashevis Singer because of the magician of Lublin, although Bashevis Singer never lived in Lublin, although some people even come and look for his house. Because it's such a well-known novel, while very few people know Glatstein. Glatstein is generally more difficult. He's not a popular author like Bashevis Singer, so they were completely different, but he should be recognized in Lublin and in Poland in general, not just in Lublin. Was
Right.
a great modernist poet, but it's very difficult to translate his poetry. I think his prose is not so easy, the poetic prose, but I think easier than poetry, where he experiments a lot with the language.
So also in connection to Bashevis, we have a question from Yuri Ven who also thanks you for a wonderful lecture. He says that at the very beginning you mentioned Glatstein's negative opinion of Bashevis. And he asks if in your recent research have you come across any further clues regarding Glatstein's dislike or possible jealousy of Bashevis?
Well, it's actually kind of a well-known story. There's this story of by Cynthia Ozick, Envy of Yiddish in America, that although Cynthia Ozick said it's not really Glatstein, there are and Bashevis, there are two different authors, but it presents this kind of controversy between two very different authors, and quite often critics would say that Glatstein was envious, that he envied Bashevis his fame, and not only Glatstein, also other Yiddish authors, because actually Bashevis was the only Yiddish writer who achieved such an international fame. Earlier, in the interwar period, Sholem Asch was a highly recognized author, but after the war, neither Chaim Grade nor Avram Sutzkever or Gladstein achieved fame like Bashevis, who to some extent, to a great extent, took care of his translations. Lots of his translations were tuned to the American audience, and partly you can agree with this kind of ironic or negative assessment, because Bashevis wrote lots of Schund and he repeated certain patterns. And but one thing that I really disagree with Gladstein, because in that particular piece, he criticizes Bashevis's language. He says, his language is not so rich. And I have a different opinion. I think that I love reading Bashevis in the original, and I think it's kind of more interesting the way he writes that sometimes that what he writes about. So I think Gladstein here exaggerated quite a bit, but he wasn't unique in his negative assessment of Gladstein. Most Yiddish critics valued Bashevis's brother, Israel Joshua Singer, much higher than Bashevis. So in Yiddish, Singer, it's Israel Joshua Singer. In Polish or in English, Singer is Isaac Bashevis Singer. But that's another story.
Right. Thank you. Yeji Varman asks, what was the relationship, if any, between Glatstein and Chaim Grade?
Well, this I actually don't know. I don't know
Okay.
much about it. I know that Glatstein was, I found a very interesting correspondence with Dina Abramowicz, who was a librarian at Ivo, and he would write to her quite often because she wrote some annual reports about Yiddish literature. Now I can't remember for what annual. And in one letter, he writes very critically that why did you write so much about Bashevis and you didn't mention me and other authors? So this, but I'm not sure exactly how it was with Chaim Grade.
Right. We'll just have time for a few more questions. Agi Lagutko also thanks you for a fantastic presentation. She says, you mentioned a person who wrote to Glatstein considering him an uncle. Were you able to track this person down? Are any of Glatstein's descendants alive in Lublin?
Well, not yet. This intrigued me, and I will try, maybe with the help of my friends, maybe Adam Kopciowski, historian, who is great at finding such things. No, I don't know, because he doesn't mention. I found some letters from before the war by Josef Berger, who also kind of says that he wanted to meet him and that he's his relative, but I don't think it could be the same person, but who knows, because these are letters This is a letter from 1938, while the one Gladstein mentioned is from 30 years later, but maybe it will be possible, thanks to some of these things that I found at Evo, this actually creates an opportunity and necessity to continue my detective work.
Nice. This is the last question. It's from Sarah Belova. It's a bit long and may actually require an email response, but I'll read it and you can decide.
Yeah, if someone has some questions, and it's easy to find my email on the
Okay.
Maria Curie Skłodowska University, but please do.
So she says, I'm currently conducting research on the peregrinations of another wandering Jewish poet active during the pre-war, interwar, and post-war century, Avram Sutzkever. I'm looking specifically at his poetry regarding the Siberian Imaginum penned between 1934 and 1937, but looking backward at his childhood in that Siberian corner of the world. My question is, have you by chance encountered in the archives any material regarding Glatstein's poetic contact with that tundra place? I'm thinking specifically about that line in Zing Ladino when Glatstein gestures to those cold and wondrous tundras, all the breads, all the deaths, all the taigas, all the tundras, all the wonders multicolored.
Yeah, this is a very specific question. I wouldn't be able to answer it now, but I recommend searching in the archives, because there is a correspondence with Sutzkever, and obviously they were in contact. There are some photographs also from Gladstein's visits to Israel, from the visit in 1962. He also published in the Golden Gate, so they were in touch, obviously. But the archive is so big that I tried to. There were lots of things that interested me, but I had to limit myself to certain themes, because otherwise I would get lost. But I hope this archive will be explored more, because even the librarians and Yivo told me, oh, you are the only one who actually are interested in this archive. Said that in Kadia Molodowski, there are all these people coming and researching Kadia Molodowski, but very few people look into Gladstein's archives. And it's very important, because some of the papers, for example, the paper clippings are falling apart. So I don't know if there would be a possibility to digitize some of this material, but for to the lady who asked this question, I definitely there is an important part there, Gladstein and Sutzkever.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to Professor Monika Adamczyk-Garbowska for this wonderful lecture. Again, this was sponsored by the Workmen's Circle Dr. Emanuel Pat Visiting Professorship in East European Jewish Studies at the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. Again, we are not able to bring you these wonderful lectures and fellowships. We're not able to provide fellowships for scholars and students without your support. So please consider making a donation if you can, and especially if you enjoyed today's lecture. Once again, thanks to all of you for joining us, and thanks to Professor Adamczyk-Garbowska.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to all my friends who patiently listened to my reports on Glatstein and who've supported me in many different ways. So, and thank you very much, Eddie, for conducting this lecture.
Thank you.